So before we start, I just want to give a huge shout out to our Patreon supporter and follower, Larry S., who posed the question, what does it mean that you're only writing in the key of A, G, and F sharp? Which prompted me to think about this idea, and here's my response. Hope you enjoy. Hi, so a lot of my friends will come over to the house and look at my flutes, and when they do, they always kind of look at the backside and ask me this question, what does that letter on the back of the flute mean? So I thought I'd take a little bit of time just to explain that in maybe like a beginning sense, an advanced sense, and then a really complex sense. So let's talk about this in the terms of a beginner idea, right? So that letter on the back of the flute, what that means is that is the lowest note that you can play on the flute. So this flute is an A flute, which means the lowest note I can play is an A. So if I put all my fingers here on the flute and just cover all the holes and play, that is an A. A on the keyboard, A on the flute. And that's kind of like the beginning idea.
Wait a minute!
There's a little bit more to it than that. So let's explain a little bit about the basics of how you play the flute. So the flute has these 6 holes on my 6-hole flute, or it can have 5 holes on 5-hole flutes. And usually what that means on a 5-hole flute is that this hole right here, this 3rd hole, is actually covered up. There's no hole there. So you get 2 up top and 3 on the bottom. And the reason being is that hole is covered is because in a Native American wood flute, like a beginning traditional sounding Native American wood flute, you cover that hole anyways. It's what's called an anchor finger. You actually keep it there and it's anchored and you never move it. That 3rd finger is always there. So that way when you play, you get a very simple scale and a nice scale, and that's called a pentatonic scale. It is a 5-note scale, and you get that by covering up and having that anchor finger right there on the 3rd hole. More importantly, that scale, that pentatonic scale, is a minor pentatonic scale. It's not a major pentatonic scale. So that A is actual A minor, and that's kind of important. Just understand that pentatonic scale that you're playing is called a minor pentatonic scale, and that is the beginning idea of what that note means on the back of the flute. So in the advanced concept world, we know from music theory that certain minor scales have correlating major scales. So we have a minor scale that's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. And then we have a major scale that shares the exact same notes. And for us, that major scale is going to be C major. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Those notes are exactly the same as in the minor scale. All of it is the exact same notes. So those two are relative major and relative minors to each other. Now that's important because the Native American wood flute is a very static instrument. It doesn't give you a lot of flexibility like other instruments do to be able to play any key that you want to. Especially when you think that with that anchor finger, I can really only play the A minor pentatonic scale. I can't go and say, okay, now I'm going to play D minor pentatonic or B minor pentatonic. I don't have that flexibility with this instrument to be able to do that as easily as you can with other instruments. So I'm stuck, really, with the A minor pentatonic. Or playing also with harmonies, having it be with the C major scale. But for the most part, when I play the notes on this flute, I can play in A minor and I can play in C major. That's pretty much it. So that's really one of the big things with this, especially in terms of that letter on the back is, okay, this is going to be for A minor or C major, and that's about it. I can't really play too much other than that. So remember from the advance that there's these things, correlating major and minor, but there's also other scales out there. So let's take the C major scale, for instance. You have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Well, the minor scale starts on the sixth note, that A. So if we were to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, that's our minor. But we could start on any one of those other notes and actually have another scale. For example, the Dorian scale starts on the second degree. So from C major, we actually start on D and use the exact same notes. D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. That's the scale of the Dorian mode in C major. Now, the reason why that becomes important is because this flute, when you actually take your finger off that anchor and actually play and up the scale, you're actually going to play an A Dorian scale. Kind of sounds minor, but there's actually a little bit of like it's not an accidental, it's just a different stepping than what the minor scale gives you. So, I mean, do you actually really play a lot of Dorian music? In traditional Native American wood flute playing, yes. You actually do a lot of Dorian mode, but for the most part, when you start out in the beginning, you keep that anchor finger there, so you play a lot of more minor than you do in this Dorian feel. It's a way for beginners to get into the flute really quickly, and then have you learn advanced concepts as you move along. You actually end up having a little bit more, diversity with harmonies that you can play around with when you start to understand that there are these different modes that you can play around with harmonically. I can play in A minor, I can play in C major, I can play in A Dorian, which is the second degree of the G major scale, so there's actually a G major that you can play inside here. I can actually flip my anchor finger around and not have it be on the third hole, but actually have it be on the fourth hole, and if I do that, I actually can play an F major. So there are a lot of other different scales I can play in, but it's just still not as flexible, right? I can't play in B flat major. I can't really play in like D major. So there's a lot of things I can't play in, but there still is some flexibility in terms of what I could play in. For the most part, Native American wood flutes don't play a lot with like accompaniment. They play a lot by themselves. So you'll see these melodies and things written for just the flute part by itself. But when you actually start playing with other people and make it, more of a ensemble effort and make it a lot more fun, then you want to start to understand, oh, here's how I use this flute, or here's where this flute is going to come into play. So even with all this craziness that we just talked about with scales and, harmonies and colors and all stuff, it really comes down to just one simple idea. That letter that's on the flute, that is the lowest tone of the flute that we can play. That's really it. It is the lowest note. And yes, there are all these other things about, scales and what you can play in and keys and stuff. But if we're talking about just picking up the instrument to play A flute, lowest note is A. And that's it. Hey, thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, click that thumbs up because that's going to tell the world that you liked it. It's also going to help us out a little bit. Also, if you haven't subscribed to our channel, subscribe to our channel because that's going to, put our videos into your home feed, which is kind of fun, so you get notified as soon as new content is being produced. Also got to give a huge shout out to our Patreon community, because without our Patreon community, I don't know if we can be creating videos like this or even producing content. It's with supporters in Patreon that we're able to actually do more, create more, and get you excited about the Native American Wood Flute as much as we're excited about the Native American Wood Flute. So thank you for watching, thank you for our Patreon community, and for everything else, just enjoy the rest of your day, and if you can play the flute, that's always awesome.